The first thing I'll say is that what's happening in Ukraine is not an invasion, it's a genocide. We have to keep on raising our voice against this genocide. It has to come to an end. And the whole world needs to put as much sanctions that are needed. And definitely, we all have to say in a blunt and a very strong way that if this doesn't come to an end, more sanctions like never seen before have to be incorporated into the international system. Now, the second thing that you mentioned is about the energy shock. And Colombia has now an opportunity. Colombia has not only the possibility to sell more oil and sell more gas in the next years, but also we have 85% of the coal reserves in South America. Now, the world is decarbonizing, which is true, but at the same time, I think that capacity for us to supply some of the needs in markets that need to prevent any further deterioration based on dependency on Russia has to happen very fast, and we're doing it. And last but not least, we have also become the leaders of the energy transition in Latin America. We launched our green hydrogen route, so we expect Colombia to become the largest exporter of green hydrogen in the next 24 months.
So how quickly, or have you already ramped up production to start meeting this new increased demand?
Well, this is very important because we not only have the capacity to produce in Colombia, but we have made very strong strategic investments elsewhere. For example, we made a joint program with Occidental Petroleum in Texas, in the Permian Basin. We are already producing 50,000 barrels of oil per day, and we can get up to 150,000 barrels of oil per day if we get further approval of the exploration and exploitation in the U.S.
Sure.
So we're trying to diversify all the sources, and I think at the moment where we are, we also have a very important opportunity, which is offshore drilling, because we have in deep waters maybe one of the biggest gas fields of potential in Colombian history, but also of oil.
With regard to coal, what role is your government playing in helping to direct resources? I know Colombian coal is produced by companies like Glencore or Drummond. Is it up to them in the end where and how they sell it?
Well, that's a good question because, for example, the thermal coal that we produce, we don't use that much of the thermal coal to produce energy in Colombia, but we do export it. Colombia represents, roughly speaking, almost 85% of the U.S. coal imports, but Colombia is also selling coal to other places around the world. At this moment, most of the production of 2022 has already been sold.
Okay.
And maybe most of the potential of 2023 has already been sold. So we have now the possibility to expand some of these mines with foreign direct investment, and that's why we have kept the incentives available so that new sources of investment come to Colombia and can use the supply of coal to attend their energy security needs.
What have you told the Biden administration about possibly working with Venezuela to secure more oil?
Well, we had that conversation, and I should say that what has been explained by the Biden administration was that their visit to Venezuela was more relied on having the release of a hostage than any other purpose. Now, I said, if there are people who are thinking that Venezuela can rapidly become an oil supplier, well, the deterioration of the sector, in order to get back to the lines of production they had maybe 10 years or 15 years or 20 years ago, it'll take about 3 to 4 years because they don't have the technical capacity to do that acceleration of their production lines. But Colombia can quickly, because of the investment that is taking place, maybe climb to 1.5 million, eventually to 2 million barrels a day in the next 4 years. Obviously, if we are successful on the offshore drilling that are going to be developed with U.S. corporations. But more importantly, Colombia today is getting close to 1 million barrels of oil per day. So Colombia today can become a strategic energy supplier, not only to the U.S., but to other markets around the world.
Would a new relationship with Venezuela jeopardize Colombia's relationship with the U.S.?
No, I mean, we have a strategic relationship with the United States. Colombia is the U.S. #1 ally in Latin America, and the U.S. is our #1 ally in the Western Hemisphere. But I think we also share values, and one of those values is to defend democracy. And it's clear from us, from our perspective, from the U.S. government perspective, that Maduro needs to step out of power and that there has to be a route for democracy in Venezuela, because there's no way you can swap dictatorship for oil. That won't work. We have always defended our values. values, and I'm certain that President Biden and his team will keep on defending their values so that Venezuela can rapidly engage in a democratic solution.
Mr. President, I know you're dealing with a massive migration crisis, 1.8 million refugees from Venezuela moving into your country. And because of that experience, you've been talking with our allies in Eastern Europe, Poland, Romania, Slovakia. I heard you talk to the UN Security Council about this, sharing advice on how to manage a refugee crisis. What have you told them?
In a humble way, I think, Joe, the experience that we have demonstrated is that when you have massive migration, you need to make those migrants visible and allow them to have opportunities, because it's the only way they can improve their way of living, and that's how they can also contribute to improve the country's economic and social perspectives. So next month, we'll be granting the TPS card, the Temporary Protection Status card, number 1 million. And eventually, we'll get to 1.8 million by the end of my term. This means Colombia will be the most important migration story of regularizing such a big amount of persons and allowing them to engage not only into work opportunities and access to healthcare, but at the same time to improve their way of living for a decade. Now, what we have been saying is you need to provide nutrition, immediate attention in the borderlines. You need to provide healthcare attention in the borderlines. You need to provide psychological attention to many of the families that will come with traumas that left their fathers in the Ukrainian territory fighting for the land, and then they're getting into this path of uncertainty. So I think the policies that we have implemented have demonstrated that even though we have scarce resources, we have been successful. So that story, from our perspective, wants to be shared, ought to be shared, but we're also thinking on supporting in a humanitarian way those borderline attentions in Europe.
Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
Yes.
Mr. President, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.